Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Noah Lee, and welcome to the very first episode of the Droppin Knowledge with Noah podcast. Here we are coming to you live from the AISNRC. We've got the lovely Jade Terreberry and Micah Tindor over here.
For me.
Yeah, well, you're pretty lovely too. But I brought these two folks on this particular call because I've been toying with the idea of this concept called cradle to cradle, and essentially, thinking about your customer and your vehicle as a continuous life cycle, and having your customer and your vehicles basically intersect at different points of their life cycle. So a person searching for a vehicle, you've got that vehicle, you've appraised it, reconditioned it, it's ready for sale, merchandised it, all that stuff. That's an intersection. But maybe when that shopper wants to trade it in, that's another intersection. So I wanted to, open it up to Jade and Micah to kind of talk about what they think of cradle to cradle, and what dealers should be really thinking about when it comes to that full spectrum life cycle. And now we've got a wonderful soundtrack to guide us through this message.
I love it. We asked for that little bit of music there to kick off what is going to be a great episode. So first, Noah, congrats on episode 1. Great bonus content to kick off your podcast. But I love the concept of cradle to cradle for a number of reasons. So pre-pandemic, cradle to grave consumer experience in the dealership was a thing that was talked about a lot. We had a lot of dealers and groups that were starting to toy with this idea of a single salesperson contact that takes the consumer from whether it's a lot up or a lead inquiry all the way through their meet and greet and their investigation and their product presentation and their delivery. And through that, we actually heard really good feedback from consumers. Consumers were just enamored with thinking about only having to deal with one person, not having somebody, run to the desk to get another sheet, or not having to go back to the finance box to finish out the deal. And so this cradle to cradle mentality, I think there's something there, because now that so many steps of the sale are happening online, and you think about how consumers also have this expectation that we as dealers or OEMs or lenders know what they've already done is they're moving through their purchase journey as well as their ownership journey, which I have a hunch that Micah may touch on something related to ownership journey and fixed operations. But if you really think about that life cycle, the consumer expects us to allow them in store or online to go through this full cycle that is relevant to what they've already done, that takes them one step further in the purchase, and then lets them at the end of that move very seamlessly into an ownership life cycle. And then when they're ready, bring them right back. And if you give them the experience that they want, they're going to do that. And they're probably going to do it with you.
No, I love the concept of cradle to cradle, because each segment of the business has historically run their own cradle to grave, right? I have my own cradle to grave and fixed off. You have your own cradle to grave and variable. Jade has her own cradle to grave and trying to attract customers out of the BDC. And the idea of looking at cradle to cradle is really the right way. The only time it's cradle to grave is, unfortunately, when the consumer passes. Hopefully it's 78 or 79.
Yeah.
Until that point, we do need to seamlessly hand them back and forth between these internal dealer processes. And as a dealer, we need to start thinking more of it as a total dealership process, the holistic dealership. So I love the idea of cradle to cradle and uniting those individual processes to one big process.
Absolutely. Now, how do you think that cradle to cradle applies to like the life cycle of a vehicle? Like, how does that kind of play into this?
I view the life cycle vehicle nested inside cradle to cradle. If you think of it as a circle, the customer is going to first identify a vehicle via the dealer merchandising. Eventually, you're going to show up a little farther down the circle, maybe at 3 o'clock, and that's where the appraisal is going to happen. And that's where you're going to identify recon opportunities. But also that starts to feed the next section of the parade, because once you acquire that vehicle, you're obviously going to merchandise it again. And in the process of an appraisal, in the process of identifying recon, in the process of doing recon, some of those are value add items to the merchandising to get it to the next phase. At the same time, as soon as you sell that customer vehicle, you should introduce them to the service department and start the fixed ops cycle. 100%. So I think it fits as a nested piece within the rest, and the subcomponents of merchandising, appraisal, reconditioning back to merchandising as part of the next sale all should map their data points into some of the other dealership ecosystems.
100%. I think, we were having that conversation earlier today where you pointed out this incredible stat saying that only 15% of customers are introduced to service when they purchase the vehicle. Think about how much of a missed opportunity that is to get people into that service life cycle.
Yeah.
Because if they're out of the dealership, you have less control over them, and they're going to be, more likely to go to an oil and go or, Jiffy Lube or whatever, when they could be missing out on, OEM parts, OEM trained technicians, warranty, all of that great stuff. And all you got to do is just say, hey, let's go schedule your first service appointment and make sure you're taking care of your, $47,000 investment.
Right. And we know that the average cost of a repair at an independent shop versus a dealer is only a $9 variance. So it's basically the same price, and you get the benefit of the OEM parts, the OEM certified technician, and someone who's going to know you the whole way through your journey.
Yep.
But to your point, that 15% is a problem as we think about the cradle to cradle, right?
Mhm.
Because you just finished my variable ops life cycle. You're a customer. I have you in my trickle follow-up campaign, but I should be introducing you into service. And only 15% of dealers are doing that. So you dealers out there that want to be ahead of the curve, have your salespeople introduce the customer that just bought to service and start the service life cycle. And that's how you start to build that uniform life cycle. Simple things like doing a handoff from variable fixed ops.
Love it. Jade, what would be your one key takeaway for a dealership? Just if they were going to pay attention to anything, what's one thing that they should be remembering in this?
And I give two.
Okay, I'll give you the exception.
Jade's an overachiever.
So many meaty things that you guys said there. So the first one is kind of the rub between fixed ops and variable ops. We see that same rub as a blocker to e-commerce or to product adoption on all these new and different and transformative things that are happening in our industry. But I actually heard Micah yesterday in a breakout session say that there is an opportunity where inventory acquisition is going to be such a hot topic for the next couple of years. It already has been, but it is really going to be as we see at least vehicles coming off of lease, so many less of those coming into the marketplace over the next couple of years. But that service drive is your number one spot to get really good inventory at a really great price without having to pay for transportation or auction fees, already knowing your reconditioning cost. And we talk all the time about how important reconditioning cost management is to the overall health of the fixed operation side. But I really think the number one takeaway in that cradle to cradle is your dealership organization also has to see that big picture of how important the lifetime value of the customer and the lifetime value of the vehicle are to your dealership organization. And then secondly, I'm going to come straight back to the consumer experience, which is the first question that you asked me. But the consumers also expect that in every interaction that your store has with them, that you're giving them this level of service that makes them feel special. We know that they want a sophisticated, seamless experience, but you think about how often you have the opportunity to connect with them on the service side. 10 times, 12 times, maybe 20 times more than you do on the purchase side. So why would you not put as much focus and intentionality into how you are growing that? And so I think cradle to cradle is such a simple way to say you have this kind of cradle to grave on the sales side, and then you have these concentric circles, the cradle to grave on the vehicle, and then but it all comes back to keeping that consumer attached to you through every part of the life cycle, and how better than keeping them attached during the ownership life cycle.
I love it. Anything else you want to add, Micah, on your side?
The only other thing I'll add is that consumer expectations have changed, right? I think that's the whole idea of why you came up with cradle to cradle.
Yep.
When I think of the inventory piece of the cradle, one place that dealers are really struggling right now is acknowledging that consumers now come into the appraisal process with a lot more knowledge and a lot more awareness of what their vehicle's worth. So as you think about cradle to cradle, one of the areas that you can break the cradle to cradle life cycle is if you provide a really bad customer experience at one point. And when you just were starting this path of uniting the whole dealership, now you break it with some poor customer experience. And the area that's showing up most frequently right now from an inventory perspective is in the appraisal. Not being aware that consumers on average have 2.6 cash offers. As millennial or Gen Z, they're going to come in with 4 to 6 offers. And if you're going with the process of lowballing them first and trying to work your way up, you're just going to insult them and give them the impression that your dealership's with them.
Yep.
Right when you're starting to build this cradle to cradle life cycle. So that's
I think
the
we've
one
all
thing
had
I
that
had.
experience before. I had that last year. But so I'm going to give give Jade back her time because I know she's got to catch a flight. But thank you so much, Micah. Thank you so much, Jade. Stay tuned. We're going to have some more Dropping Knowledge with Noah. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.